Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. If you're interested in our today's discussion, I'm glad to bid you welcome. My name is OLEKSIY FILATOV. I'm senior partner of the Aequo Bar Association, and the topic of today's discussion is the relations between government and businesses. For as long as businesses have existed in Ukraine, we have been trying to find an answer to the question who's to blame in these relations and what to do. And as of now, the relations between government and businesses is a complex of issues on justice, regulation, tax, policies, response to war challenges, and today we'll try to deal with those problems with the esteemed members of the panel discussion. But these people need no introduction, essentially. Let's start with Mr. RUSLAN KRAVCHENKO, General Prosecutor of Ukraine. Please give it up for him. Professional lawyer, spent a lifetime in the government, has been head of the KIEF regional military administration, and was appointed on the 21st of June, as you remember. And they say that Mr. KRAVCHENKO is the youngest ever Prosecutor General, but hopes for improvement on tide not only to his young age. The legacy that he has is very difficult. Mr. Alexander Tsevinsky, Director of Economic Security Bureau, also a professional lawyer. His entire professional background is also in the government, police, 10 years in Nabu, investigating as a detective a number of high-profile corruption crimes, and is now chairing the ESB since early August. And Ukraine has probably not seen such consolidation of public support from businesses and expert community for his candidacy, so expectations from his leadership and ESB are very high too. Lesa Kornouch is acting head of the State Tax Service of Ukraine, is also a professional lawyer, has worked in a number of government agencies, Court of Auditors and the Kiev Military District Administration, is representing the new managerial team at the State Tax Service, which is claiming to be ready for a new system and transparent communication with taxpayers. Last year, in the same panel, which was held here, all representatives of the government had a combination of public and private experience. On the contrary, now we have all the panelists who have that public DNA. Katerina Zaguri, on the other hand, is a member of the board of directors of the Darnica pharmaceutical company, one of the leading companies in the area. She is also renowned for her charitable initiatives. She is at the Aspen Institute, Ukrainian Catholic University, Tabletочки, and others. And Alexander Sokolovsky, as a famous businessman, a founder of the Textile Contact Group of companies. He is in the Federation of Employers of Ukraine and represents the Association of Light Industry, and is an initiator of Ukrainian Fashion Week. He is known for his political position, is advocating the renewal of Ukrainian production, is one of the authors of Manifest 42 that brought together businesses around the idea of a new social compact. And Ruslan Shostak, a renowned businessman from Ivat and Varis business groups, has an interest in real estate business, trade, is the initiator of a charitable fund, and is working in the Council for the Support of Businesses under the President of Ukraine. So we have this prominent people here, Mr. RUSLAN, starting from you. You have been working in the council under the president since 2021. It was set up to help resolve issues arising between government and businesses. And from your experience in the council, what is the biggest concern for entrepreneurs? Are these questions of tax or in general justice issues? Thank you for the question and for the invitation. It's really a very ambitious panel, ambitious people, because you never know the way this panel is going to end. The council was created exactly to ensure that government-to-business relations start to improve and change, because this is a huge problem that has existed for a long time until now. Government officials have always thought that businesses are just stupid people and you can trick them out of their money. But without us businessmen, the ecosystem of the country cannot exist at all. And this is the main problem that we would like to get across to all levels of the government. For me, this is just the most important change of paradigm in communication, in the way we build the country together. And I'm not saying that the businesses are all innocent, but still, this is the matter of paradigm. And the council is supposed to change that paradigm of communication. Many issues are central and they are very productive. The first thing the businesses want is to find a system of protection, because often we communicated with the Americans. For American businesses, they have ways of protecting themselves. They have Anchan and other companies, and one way or another they are all protected. In Ukrainian businesses, we do not have such instruments, because if a prosecutor has a grudge against you, that's the end of the world for you. So the problem is to build a system of protection. The second problem is injustice, is bringing the businesses out of the shadow. Many of these businesses are going underground. This problem has not been public for a long while. Changing the system of control is also an issue. The protection of capital is one of the paramount problems. Deregulation is a big problem. Businesses are over-regulated, and this makes it very difficult for a government to work with businesses. But I'm confident that we'll be able to sort these issues out step by step. We can build the system. I'm not seeing any sort of big trust from businesses to the government, despite all the engagement of businesses. But now the times are changing. I've never heard General Prosecutor from the scene telling that businesses pay me my salary. This is a citation, this is a quote. And I believe that these changes will continue to happen. These are very personal issues, and there are many of them. RUSLAN, Business Ombudsman every year conducts a study in the area of G2B relations, and it says that every claim from businesses is related to law enforcement pressure. And during the war, the demand for the efficiency of law enforcement is growing. Their powers are expanding in both informal and formal. When you were appointed to your position, one of your priorities was restoring the coordinating role of the prosecution in relation to all law enforcement agencies, which is correct from the constitutional standpoint. Can you tell us how obvious is the picture for you that now law enforcement has much more opportunities for abuse of power, for unjustified measures like arrest or bails that are tens of times more than the volume of the crime, which is nonsensical from a legal standpoint. So what is the Office of the Prosecutor General and you personally are doing or planning to do in this respect? Greetings to you all. Thank you for the question. You know, I met a lawyer, Serduk, whom I met in the courts, and he says, put more pressure on businesses, please, because we have no work to do. Indeed, there are instances of abuse. Our new partner and friend, comrade, is director of Economic Security Bureau, who is supporting us, and we keep fighting with these abuses. But I can say that when I was appointed, one more priority of mine was not only coordination, but protecting businesses and investment. What we started from auditing criminal cases registered in relation to businesses. In May and June, the Office of the Prosecutor General reported on the dashboard to the society that there were as many as 6,000 criminal cases against businesses. And our audit, we identified 23,000 of such cases. After that, we started conducting quality audit in these criminal cases. We had 3 criteria. First, the criminal cases that have been pending for many years. We were looking for elements of the crime and justified information to have this case. If it was not there, we closed those cases. The second criterion was the prospect of investigation, and if businesses said that there was nothing to investigate, we appointed an expertise and examination to establish facts, elements of the crime and damage, and if it was not there, we closed the case. If, in the opinion of law enforcement or the prosecutor, we saw elements of the crime and the legal prospect for investigation, we continued on with the case, notified the suspect of suspicion, and so on. There were also cases, and many people from businesses can confirm it, that an examination from us is one thing, but there is also examination from the defense. So we also appoint the final complex examination that puts a full stop to the whole thing. As of today, we have already closed, over less than 3 months, from the 23,000 cases, 8,000 cases. And that's not it. That's not it. It's fair to say that no one in Ukraine over the entire period of independence has done it. And this is not just an achievement of the Office of the Prosecutor General, it's also the achievement of ESB, State Bureau of Investigation, and others, because we are united for the same goal, because that was the task of the President. Speaking as a civilian, there was the task formulated as such as this: just keep your hands away from businesses. And let me say once again that the state, the government, relies on taxpayers who create jobs. And indeed, prosecutors and other law enforcement workers get their salaries from the taxes paid by businesses. And this is not the end of the story. Did you get the video about the launch of the platform or perhaps to the organizers, because you are one of the organizers, not really. Do we have the video? Could you please launch it?
Армію. Завдання правоохоронців – забезпечити умови, у яких бізнес може працювати спокійно та прозоро. Завдання Офісу Генерального прокурора – унеможливити будь-який незаконний тиск. Для цього запущено платформу «Стоп-тиск». Через портал суб'єкт господарювання може повідомити про порушення під час обшуків, безпідставне застосування заходів забезпечення кримінального провадження, безпідставне затягування досудового розслідування, вимагання неправомірної вигоди, протидія законній господарській діяльності, рейдерство, неналежне реагування на правопорушення, неправомірне застосування сили або примусу. Авторизація на ресурсі відбувається через портал «Дія». Звернення автоматично надходить до визначеного підрозділу Офісу Генерального прокурора та відповідної обласної прокуратури. Розгляд і реакція у визначені законом строки під контролем Офісу. За результатами розгляду одразу приймаються управлінські та процесуальні рішення, а бізнес отримує постійний зворотній зв'язок. Окрім індивідуальних звернень, система дозволяє бачити типові проблеми та їхню географію, щоб усувати зловживання вже на рівні політики. Стоп-тиск – це робочий інструмент, який дає бізнесу можливість швидко подати звернення і отримати захист.
Я закінчую вже.
So this is stop disks or stop pressure is an application which is simpler than using your phone. Of course, it does not resolve all of business problems, but it simplifies communication with the government and law enforcement. It is already launched. The first claims have been received, and answering your first question about the money that were seized illegally, there were many searches, unjustified searches, and property that was seized despite court orders. Businesses apply in this respect. Law enforcement agencies are resolving those cases, and property was returned. And the most important issues related to criminal investigations have been resolved in many instances. So when I was nominated, I spoke with business representatives. I told them that if there are any issues, we can have an international examination to have an end to this story. In order to not be appointed to our positions for a lifetime and to put an end to all questions from businesses. Thank you, Mr. KRAVCHENKO, for this illustrative and substantive approach. Your work really impresses us, and I hope that practical results will soon be even more visible. Our other colleague has been extensive experience of cooperation with investigative bodies, and one of the most high-profile cases is the case of Igor Mazepa. From your experience, is the state, the government, able to effectively respond to abuse on the part of agencies on which the existence of the country depends? How did you resolve that case? And do you think that the solution that you found was unique, or do you think that after your case there were some other cases, similar cases? Greetings to you all. Thank you for the invitation to the organizers. I've taken part in many forums and meetings with businesses, but this is the first time that I see this wide representation of high-ranking officials in such important law enforcement agencies. This has never happened before. when my directors of my company were found out that I was invited to this panel discussion, they asked me to tread lightly because we have large businesses here, but I'm well, a middle businessman. So I wish that our business will not have problems after this panel, but I did not promise anything to them explicitly. I can talk at length about the answer, the question that you raised, but we are pressed for time, and I think that this is interesting for businesses to understand how to work with barristers effectively, but it's also important to understand whether you should take the problem to public when someone is attacking you. Starting from 2014, when I started actively writing posts on my Facebook account, there have been dozens of cases when I was discussing public issues with law enforcement, and perhaps hundreds of issues when I talked about tenders, unfair tenders. People tend to overreact when there are cases of unfairness, logically. In my case with prosecution, it's very interesting. I will share it with you, and then you will make your own conclusions where you should take problems to public. Last year, we had a very slow case in regard to one company, which was potentially attractive for investment, but I knew that there was a criminal case against it. I knew who ordered this criminal case. It was a people's deputy who was interested in land plots. But I said no to him, and later I discovered that there was a criminal case in regard to some technical aspects. I did not pay any particular attention to it, but when exactly 1 year ago searches started and suspicions were issued, myself and the governing director had restrictive measures imposed on us, and searches and arrests just for nothing. Earlier we did not have the Stop Disk platform, so we launched a complaint to the Prosecutor General. There was a Department for Protection of Investment. OLEKSIY was the entry point for us. He also attended many meetings like this. He saw this complaint and told me, well, it's almost impossible to close the case now. You should have come earlier. And if you have a suspicion and searches and arrests, it's even more impossible. So, okay, you can simply leave your complaint at this. But even this can get much worse, even downhill from this. I told him that I did not commit any crime, and that I do not worry about making my situation worse. The next day, I published a post on my Facebook account. It was a rather long post with names, namely the procedural prosecutor, Alexander Shapovalov. I mentioned the person who ordered this criminal case and the proposals that were made to me, and that caused a reverberation, an explosion in the media. Telegram channels and media platforms started reposting this, thousands of reposts, and more than 1 million views on my page on Facebook alone. And in 2.5 weeks, and this is a record, as they say in Ukraine, the criminal case was withdrawn from the OLEKSIY prosecution. It was given to the other district, and because of the absence of elements of crime, the case was closed. In 2.5 weeks, I published another post on Facebook thanking the General Prosecution, because the system is valuable not because it's committing mistakes or not committing mistakes, but because of the way it reacts to its mistakes. So if a businessman feels that he is right, that some things were just made to spite him, to cause problems for him, you should go to public, talk about it publicly. You do not need to use some Telegram channels of ill reputation to protect yourself. You can see with unarmed eye that this is not effective. You should engage in personal communication in your Facebook, for instance, because you will always find friends. You will always find people who are not acquainted with you, but if you talk confidently, if you're not afraid, if you do not worry that your situation may worsen, it's going to be effective. You should not be afraid because people are dedicating their lives. They're sacrificing themselves on the front line, and we just worry about some people with military ranks in the law enforcement. So this is how the Manifest 42 union emerged, and the Federation of Employers was really helpful, and the Council under the President of Ukraine too, and all the other structures were ready to help. So do not be afraid. Come forward. Although this manual mode of management is of course not workable, we need to discuss level playing field instead. Businesses are more prone to be very isolated and just keep it to themselves instead of engaged in a real battle with law enforcement. When these law enforcement agencies just lose any sense of reality and rules. Thank you for this interesting story. Madam Lesia, apart from law enforcement, businesses are worried about taxes. If we take the Ombudsman statistics, he says that complaints about justice account for 15% of all claims, but claims against tax authorities account for 45% of all cases. Economic forecast against that background is very mediocre, I would say. And as Mr. Shostak has said, according to various estimates, some people say that 40 or 50 or even up to 70% of businesses are underground in some areas. So does the state plan to finance the increasing expenditure by imposing more taxes on people who are paying taxes? Or perhaps finally someone will start paying taxes among those who are not paying them now? So what are the practical steps to bring the economy out of the shadow?
Good afternoon. Pleasure to welcome you all. While the previous speakers were talking, I was looking at the audience and I saw many familiar faces, and I was thinking, what should I say more that tax administration had not communicated yet in the recent year? I think we did a lot in the recent year to set that the breach of trust and launch that dialogue, and I probably see each of you weekly, and weekly tax administration tends to communicate regularly what's going on, what was going on, and what we plan for upcoming period. I would disagree with OLEKSIY that taxes are growing constantly. As the representative of tax administration, I'm concerned that new special regimes are introduced offering benefits and exemptions, and because of this enormous aggression, the tax base is decreasing. We offer tax exemptions. We cry, we buy napkins in Yeva, and then we all think, how can we prevent that from happening? But that's a joke. Jokes aside, currently the legislative initiatives on increasing taxes are absent. That's a good news for business. I think so, but the state tax administration definitely had not initiated any increase of taxes recently. We have VAT, we have PDFO and added value tax. It's going to stay. In terms of de-shadowing, that's another concern to us. Just a few days ago, I met with some chum, and we were getting into details with companies. What is that de-shadowing, and what other practical steps could be possible? And we got 2 points. The first, that's de-shadowing the area and setting the equal competitive conditions. That's the tax gap methodology that we are working with the Ministry of Finance, and that's a requirement of our international partners, IMF, and that's where the origins comes from in our previous talks, that 50% sits in shadow. So that's a question, that they sit in shadow not because they minimize the taxes, but because these conditions were created, and that's the response of the entire nation, of the entire society. What is that tax gap here? What are the norms that prevents, or what agreements are not working between business and business, business and state, to give origins to these shadow schemes? That's one case. In terms of practical steps that tax administration implements to counter the illegal activities causing the reduction of taxes, that's the regular actions of tax control that everyone is aware. Inspections, factual, cameral, audits, requests. And in that area we are moving as we were advancing in the previous years. The only thing to reflect that what we try to implement with our team, that our action in terms of cooperation with business would be logical and rational sensed, and that would be aimed at the normal human communication, so the tax official would understand the peculiarities of the businesses, where he or she goes with the inspection, be aware of economic operations, and would be able to provide proper assessment. And when the tax inspector comes, it's not the case that we start pressing, but be aware that the tax control, there's also the element of countering, minimizing taxes, avoiding tax payments, and that's it. Thank you, dear Olesa. I think the entire business is grateful that this year you do not plan to increase taxes, but we do remember that the year is not over yet, but the military tax being increased. Those who are paying white salaries, they felt very much that increase. Dear Catherine, Darnitsa, since the beginning of the war, had paid some 2 billion taxes, if I'm not mistaken, according to publicly released figures. Textile Contact, I guess probably the same amount. Varus, Mr. Shostak, in last year, some 1.5 billion approximately of taxes paid. So, dear Catherine, well, where the business believes an adequate taxes in return of policies and services that states provide in return, what business can expect for the money paid? Thank you. I do hope that was not a deliberate action. That was a poor joke, but dear Lesya, when you have a headache that exemption comes, Citramon from Darnitsa would be helpful to you, but jokes aside, I would kindly ask, seek Citramon Darnitsa in apothecs. As soon as you will hear that Darnitsa is out of business, talk to Prosecutors General, where this pressure stop. Talk to them. Is there any titles other? That's what apothec says. It's not true. There is something for Darnitsa. I'll talk to them. So pharma is the third area in paying taxes. So that's enormous industry, in fact. But then I'm going to be a bit of capitalist, because I am a supporter and a follower of a big taxes. I'm against exemptions, and I do like when business pays taxes. Those who are in shadow, they are criminals. And if we would ask criminals, dear criminals, would you be so kind to come and pay taxes, or stop doing your felonies, that's a strange behavior. We should apply some characters, not pay attention to criminals, not to work with criminals, but to focus to those with whom you interact with, what sort of companies you deal with, and stop interacting with them. Is it worse paying taxes when you may be dissatisfied with all the services provided by the state? Well, taxes, that's the tool. Tool for what? To do what? So in that country, that's the issue of the national security and defense. We pay taxes so we can sit here, so the state would be secured, we would be more or less safe and secure, and glory to the armed forces and defense forces for being able to be here. That's why we pay taxes. First of all, that's the national security. And yes, we have to pay more, and the military tax should be higher. And yes, we have to pay, all of us, at the same time seeking law enforcement engagement to counter felonies. That's what should attention to be paid off, and I would disagree with the Manifest 42. Pay attention to the national manufacturers, because the colleagues from Manifest 42 say, don't help business, we will cope. We will cope, but let's look at the national manufacturer. Currently, in medications, we see that without Ukrainian medicine, we won't be in that more or less stable state, and our area of healthcare would not be the one as it is if we would be dependent on import fully. So we have to look at the national manufacturer. For the national manufacturer's safety and security, that's the clear and transparent rules of the game. If there are unclarities, let's talk, let's write, let's get to Facebook, call, use any possible channels. What is the safety for the state? What could that be? National security. That's first of all the working companies on the ground and people going to work, and also people who will mobilize. So definitely you have to pay taxes. We need more taxes. We need to support the state. Who but us? Who but business? Who else would do that? Whom we should talk? So let's pay more, and let's work to make sure that around us we will have people with whom we can sit on the same table, but not those who have a tax burden 10 times less, and people receive not the white salary. That's great. Thank you very much. Dear Alexander Igorovich, question to you. So white business, clear business complains that gray business, black business is working successfully, and in some cases not without the support of law enforcers. So the white business faces over thoroughful attitude from controlling agencies and oversighting agencies, and receive claims in disputable situations which, according to the law, should be resolved towards the taxpayer's advantage. Even in circumstances when state tax service conducted their review and have no issues, at the same time Bureau of Economic Security may launch the criminal case on the same reviewed successfully period of time. Is that going to continue? Or we can expect on implementing the principle consulting goes first between Economic Bureau and industry? Do we expect the dialogue between Economic Security Bureau and business? Thank you for your question. Thank you for the invite and possibility to express myself. Firstly, communication between the Bureau of Economic Security and business is established. We do run that systemic interaction to make sure that this communication would be based on clear and understandable principles. That's the interaction on different forums, and right at the Bureau and other joint activities, including the tax administration and respective areas of business. Few words in terms of decisions of investigative bureau. That document states a given fact of absence of paying taxes. At the same time, if this document is absent or the review took place, it does not guarantee the circumstances reveal that everything was correct and all the taxes being paid. Although now we are fully reorient our activity and we shape our engagement in a way so we would target those who do not pay taxes, who do not pay salaries, who sells products outside of the tax registration. So our key task that we allocated to us to create equal opportunities, first of all, equal opportunities for each businessman to stay in the same conditions, in the same environment while running their respective economic activities. The fact of tax payment is not a privilege if there are other breaches takes place, but the priority of our attention and focus to be paid to those areas where the most problems sit. So that's the way we try and change the format of our engagement. Besides, as it has been mentioned by the Prosecutor General, as I got my place, we conducted the audit of criminal proceedings. It lasts still now, but there is a number of decisions agreed with prosecutors to close cases and criminal proceedings. These are out-of-date criminal proceedings with the large doubts of the felonies committed and other facts. In terms of communication, in terms of complaints received, we develop a system that every complaint would be considered in details. We have cases when our position is firm, and we will stick to that. We will prove it utilizing expertise, and we will bring it to the court. At the same time, we see that there were some previous cases mistaken. Then we objectively review the situation, and having respective reasons available, detectives make respective decisions. So we have to be guided by a common sense. Any decision should be based on a common sense. If we can see that situation has no perspective, we'd rather focus that resource in the area that has the most problems in it. We know that one of the key messages or wishes or requirements of the white business sits in creating equal opportunities. When there is someone who pays everything and next to there is someone who is not paying taxes or avoid paying taxes or apply different schemes, so our attention first of all and foremost would be paid to the latter one, the one who is not paying taxes. I guess, well, we will advise look at pharma area in closer look if necessary. Well, activity of the Economic Security Bureau is insufficient as of now. There are objective and subjective reasons for that. Objective that in fact we are a young agency, it's still under the creation, and we do a significant stress on prevention. So analytical work is aimed at identifying risks and take actions before the event had happened. But thank you for your hint. In fact, we already started to interact. We have number of hints received. Soon we'll have the competition, and we would like to see the representatives of a private business. They fully aware how to interact with those who breach the rules of the game. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dear Mr. Shostak, to what extent you, as a businessman, is concerned with the competition with those who work in black or in gray, and whether state is doing enough to ensure the equal rules of a game? It's a very strong question. It's not about my businesses that I can underline. I'll get back slightly. Our company is not that big in Ukraine, but in recent 3.5 years, we paid more than 20 billion taxes. 20 billion taxes as of group. And that's the money that we decided that the war is going on to keep in our pockets. We gave this money to the state to buy equipment, to buy ammunition to our militaries. We were sitting here and diving deep in philosophy, but that's because of our lads in the war. You cannot exist in the conditions when we pay 8 billions of taxes per year, and your competitor, who has the same capacity and the same number of people, pays 100 million. That's impossible to compete within for international investors who come to Ukraine. I cannot explain how come it works. It's absolutely unclear. That's about Ukrainian reputation. It's all about everything. It's not about my pure case that I'm paying taxes and someone is not. You cannot build up a new businesses. I'm surprised why entrepreneurs comes to business not having a deal originally with the state to cover their growth. You can't grow in such an environment when your competitor has that possibility and been exempt from taxes and you're not. I can say the same about the custom. Custom is a protective barrier set to develop the national production, whatever it is. But if you are not paying taxes in customs for imported fabric or medication, that blocks for 100% the development of a national product. And the customer who collects $10,000, that's nothing, that's kopecks in terms of the national development strategy. Nation is not going to be developed having caps in the custom. We cannot compete with Chinese production, with Chinese investments, with Chinese money. We partially can cope by performing a defensive function within. And that's the question to the customs. We don't have customs here, but to those state officials who try to build a qualitative state. We are not going to be a qualitative state while 50% of the state or 40% sits in shadow and we cannot compete and develop. The other thing, investors cannot create new productions where their competitors can bring things without paying taxes, VAT, military tax, paying nothing. So the issue number one, open borders for investors and clear rules of the game for all international and domestic businessmen. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ruslane. Today we hear, not only today, in fact, that business expects fill in the budget because of de-shadowing or redirecting to the budget some corruption channeling, which instead of the budget being channeled to someone's pockets. But the business that is diligent in paying taxes expects not to be under the pressure of law enforcers. And you recalled today quite an impressive statistic on how many cases against business were closed as a result of your audit. How do we do that the cases against business would not be launched? Whether anyone bear the responsibility for misusing a taxpayer's money for launching those cases which were closed? Well, as a lawyer, you can understand me that our law enforcer, according to the Article 214, that in Ukraine the registration of criminal case takes place almost automatically. Sticking to these requirements of this article that I've just mentioned, we as the law enforcer, prosecutors, investigators, are committed to register the case. If we see there is nothing in it, no felonies, no breaches, we cancel that. The claimer, whether it's a requested claim or someone dislikes, goes to court and court makes decision to support the claimer. So, to my personal view, this is almost automatical registration of criminal cases. We, prosecutors, National Police, Security Service, Security Bureau, trying to interact with business, and business is very supportive in providing the respective documents to undertake decision or to do the review and then make a decision. But registrations takes place, and in terms of figures, national police, out of 20,000 criminal cases, they registered 15,000 criminal cases. That's small, medium size, and big business whatsoever. So in my view, we have to stop that. I was at an SDC session chaired by the president, and there were issues related to business considered, and I've suggested respective changes to the Article 220(14) of Criminal Procedural Case Code to defend business. And Mr. Alexander Tsevinsky would disagree, but I've explained that I did that before his arrival, and it's based that all the articles regulating business 191, 206, 209, 212, all the criminal proceedings towards the business decisions are to be made by the respective head of the prosecuting agency. So the regional prosecutor, oblast prosecutor and his deputies, and prosecutor general and his deputies. I personally believe I assumed additional responsibility and demonstrated initiative. The workload on prosecutors, on me, on my deputies is enormous, but we are ready to be responsible towards business. I've dismissed the unit chaired by Mr. Banyuk because that department, on my personal reflection, was a layer for every other prosecutor. For Prosecutor General, business come and said, we have a criminal case registered. Let's that department to consider. I've heard that from business and I've dismissed that. So business complains, department takes that 2 weeks after, says we can't do anything. You know why? Because they are not the procedural heads in those procedural criminal proceedings where business is complaining. So me as a Prosecutor General, my deputies are responsible to the business, National Police Security Service, Economic Security, Department of Bureau Investigation. Yes, we have a Department of Organized Crime Counter, and there is a unit that is responsible for investment security, protects from a radar cases. We created the platform that is going to be quicker. Business do not need to print the document, waste resources for paper, can download all the claims in the stop pressure platform. As soon as the prosecutors receive, they can see in which area, which unit is in charge of that case that business is complaining, whether it goes to police or elsewhere. So we communicate quickly. So I've suggested to change that approach because I believe that that should reduce the pressure to a maximum extent. And I've calculated in person. Now we have a figure, 15,000 of criminal proceedings all over Ukraine. We will review, we will analyze, we will apply expertise, something to be closed, something to be sent to court according to the law. But that figure cannot be more than 5,000 criminal proceedings for the entire Ukraine. And I think when I was in charge of Bucha and we were investigating the war crimes quite a lot, every prosecutor had some 10,000 criminal proceedings. Out of 5,000 criminal proceedings all over Ukraine, if they would take place, we, prosecutors and law enforcers, would be quick in communication and considering the case whether the felony been identified or not. Alexander Tsevinsky would disagree because on one hand we have evidences that he would not have authorities to register criminal proceedings. But as a legislator, and I talked in person, I promised that all his initiatives would be registered by me in person, and we will interact in constructive way to ensure the rule of law in the state. If a legislator is not going to support those initiatives, as I've presented them at NSDC session and SDC submitted them to Parliament, we'll continue to run our qualitative and quantitative audit, but I will look at business eyes completely in open way and honest way. And I've tried to do my best for business good, but if legislator is not going to support, business should be aware whose fault is that. Alexander Tsivinsky would like to comment, but I'm afraid that we're going to take a bit more time. I just would like to clarify. Thank you for your profound response. Nevertheless, in terms of Article 214, not all the cases being initiated based on a statement. There are cases initiated by the prosecutors or by investigators. Let me complete my question. And secondly, and the most important, from the strategy and policy of the Prosecutors General's standpoint, is there going to be any responsibility for those who launched the case and did nothing, did no investigation, instead of focusing on investigation on some prospective cases, some procedural activities took place, arrest of assets and other proceedings, causing problems for the business, and eventually there was nothing to look for. Is there any responsibility to be applied? Thank you for your question. In terms of registration based on some analytical products or initiated by tax administration, I've also suggested in my initiatives to support the initiative that analytical material of tax administration and Economic Security Bureau would consider it the document by default, so the business would stay protected, so it would not be the evidence and to be reviewed by expertise. But business did not support this proposal at the committee, so legislator at the committee had not endorsed these changes. In terms of your next question, and I'll get back to the first one, I think when those analytical products would automatically be registered and could be seen by the respective officials responsible for oversight and would be considered at the document, so the liability of law enforcers would hire, and everyone who produced analytical material or writes a statement would double check, am I confident in what am I doing, whether my previous suspicious towards business is reasoned well enough. So I would like to protect business even more, but it has not been supported. Goes without question. Definitely we will do. There is a criminal code, illegal proceeding to the criminal liability. I promise as a Prosecutor General, if you believe there are no reasons for being liable to criminal prosecution, please talk to me. We will do all the required proceedings. And if you believe that prosecutor official is liable, we will do the investigation. We also have the internal inspectorate. If the normal case is not sufficient, internal security, I've increased the unit responsible for trust detector checks. That's the quick solution. If there is a suspicious towards the prosecutors from business or internal security, we immediately initiate the truth detector test, and we can check whether the individual tells us the truth or not. So I'm going to be hard in my response if the evidence is going to be confirmed for any illegal actions from prosecutors' side or law enforcers. there is a stop pressure from reflecting all our claims and requests towards prosecutors and law enforcers.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive answer. Alexander, obviously you would like to give your comment on the bill 13449. You will have that opportunity, but I have another question to you. How do we ensure that when a detective or an investigative officer launches in any format, irrespective of who's opening the case, opens an investigation, how do we ensure that apart from those investigations, he weighs in the potential damage to businesses? I mean, for taxes to be paid by businesses, which may not be paid because of blockage of operations of a company, and the amount of resources to be used, which are insured by taxpayers, that have to be employed in order to investigate the case. So how does he weigh in those aspects with the potential result of the case, please? Thank you. A few words about the draft bill. With RUSLAN, we have the sole difference about the Unified Register court cases. I will say that the NSDC Council has been reviewing this problem before my appointment. The open competition, the problem within it was that the operation of the ESB had to be renewed. This is my priority today. We need to understand that according to various estimates, we have 1 to 1.3 trillion hryvnias in shadow economy, and depriving the ESB of the ability to perform its function is going to reduce the pace of our work. As head of institution, I'm ready to be responsible for the way the ESB operates, and our key task is to be as efficient as possible, employ people, and conduct our functions. We have businesses in the shadow, we have people avoiding the payment of taxes, and there are hundreds of claims, there are thousands of claims from people that have to be processed, and we understand that the pace is not going to be as high as expected, as we would like it to be. I was appointed to be responsible for the work, and I need instruments to do that. And this is one of the instruments, the tools that all the law enforcement agencies had. The only question is about the ESB. We are working with businesses, we are trying to build an efficient communication, and our resource is going to be directed to create a level playing field. Because without the appropriate instruments, we are going to have issues and claims against myself. On other issues, me and the Prosecutor General are perfect agreement. We'll be able to provide clear answers. If there are unjustified criminal cases, it's a very correct thing that was expressed by RUSLAN, that before when criminal case was submitted, 10 days were needed to review the case. But given the fact that a lot of criminal offenses were concealed, so to say, hidden, when the new criminal code was adopted in 2012 to resolve this issue, an automatic registration was introduced. And today, practice shows that automatically registering every case is not necessary, it's not efficient. So this is the question of the presence of enough ground we need to have a compromise here. About resources, 10 months ago I delivered a presentation on one of the conferences when I was not head of the ESB yet, and I saw for myself a very simple thing. I always thought to myself as a law enforcer, and I have always shared this position, that the law enforcement system and the body that I worked in then is working on the money of the taxpayers. And putting myself in the shoes of a taxpayer, I told myself, probably the taxpayer would be interested in knowing how his money are used, how efficiently are they applied. And at that conference, I offered an algorithm, the economy of a criminal case, which envisages the usage of a dashboard of how the flow of money is used. For instance, 20 billion is used for investigations, and I think that the taxpayers would like to know how much money of those 20 billion were used for the most painful issues, for the most poignant issues of concern to society and businesses. What are the results? How many cases ended in nothing? And we started developing that system when I was working in Nabu, and now we are planning to introduce the same system in the ESB gradually to ensure that the resources that are used by the ESB in the future can be presented to the public and businesses for you to understand where we are investing the taxpayers' money that we receive. On the other hand, for the general prosecution, it's also important to see how the resources are distributed across the bodies and how those money are used. Do they really reflect the priorities defined by the government? Because it's one thing when we investigate cases by sectors, and another case when we see the general picture of the redistribution of resources. Society has a compact with the government. It has delegated part of its rights to the government. It finances the government, the institutions, and in return it expects certain services on security, on level playing field for businesses. And every person who orders these services expects them to be as efficient as possible and as quality as possible. As for your question, I think that in regard to resources, we need to look for a way out. We need to understand that every case which is when it is being investigated, the investigator already knows none of the cases you know the results. You need to know the elements of the crime. You need to discover whether the crime was committed, the offense was committed, and in many cases it is not clear before you have an algorithm of action. And if we understand that there is nothing to investigate, the decision has to be taken very expeditiously and review the most problematic cases instead. In the ESB we have 32 criminal offenses, and all of them are economic. So we also have to consider, take cognizance of the business position. Because if we prosecute those who pay taxes, then instead of investigating those who avoid paying taxes, then white businesses may soon become gray or even black. That gives a poor signal on the way you can ensure your existence in this environment. Alessia, the question is to you, Mr. Alexander. Did you want to give another comment? Okay, I'll give you a floor later. The state always says that it seeks to build a partnership or relations with businesses. Businesses complain that these declarations remain on paper, and in reality, it is happening differently. Last year, the Council of the Ombudsman published statistics on tax revenues, and in their opinion, and according to their analysis, the 99% 99%, and these are data over the last 7 years, 99% of tax revenues are ensured by voluntary payments, and only 1% is added thanks to reviews by tax bodies. So what is the practical conclusion the government would have to make from this analysis to implement its tax policies? And to be more specific, do you think that the state will begin to trust businesses? Thank you for the question. I always start answering this question about partnership between government and businesses by saying that business is the state and the state is business. You cannot divide them. There are state bodies and entrepreneurs. This is a different thing. So I think that, as Catherine has said, businesses and the state have the same goal: to survive in the circumstances of a prosperous and thriving Ukraine. So all the actions taken by conscious citizens of Ukraine, whether they be in businesses or in the state bodies, have to be directed to ensure in legal conditions to ensure their survival. And for this you have to take legal actions, lawful actions. If 99% of taxes are voluntary, I can agree with that, I concur, because we have a large number of claims when taxes are added. But in terms of those 99% amounting to the absolute figure of money that have been received, it raises the question of the effectiveness of relations between the government and businesses to ensure the effective flow of revenues to the budget. And this is the bridge and the road along which we have to move together in order to attain our goal. Let me cite Catherine again. To survive jointly. We as the State Tax Service, I listened to the previous discussion between the ESB and the Office of the Prosecutor General. I felt myself to be more of a friend to businesses because we do not have investigators in criminal cases. We are very mild in relation to those strict institutions of law enforcement. So in order to ensure and to confirm our transparency and integrity, last month, on the occasion of the Day of Entrepreneur, at every our office we opened the position of tax consultants, and we urge you to use these services. So we also have a demand for a real simple dialogue. The three words that we rely on our activities is attention, trust, and respect. So the modern tax service, which is going the same way with Ukrainian businesses, has to be guided by these three words in its activities. Thank you. It's very impressive. Catherine, what do you think? Ronald Reagan, by the way, said that the most terrifying words in the US lexicon are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." So, do you think there can be trust between government and businesses? Well, before we are kicked out of the hall, I can say that trust is about money mostly, because if you trust a person, you enter into a financial relationship with the company. And these relations often end up to be pecuniary in nature. So I think there is some trust, because once again, we would not be sitting here and these people would be hiding from them. So there is trust. But what is this trust? We need to stop engaging in that circumlocution, trying to gloss over things. We need to be adults. We need to stop telling lies to each other. We need to start paying taxes. We need to stop working with those operating in Russia. We need to stop working with shadow businesses. If your company is the only one in the market, but it's not really trustworthy, you need to stop operating with this company. This is where trustworthy relationship starts. We need to be adults and be real partners, because not real all partners are ideal, apart from my husband. This is an exemption from the rule. And in this partnership, we need to forgive people. We need to be able to rectify our mistakes, and that is why we are living here, and to just continue living and working and stop glossing over things. We need to unpack the difficulties, the problems, and say things, express them the way they are. So pay attention to the pharmaceutical market, please. Alexander, considering the timetable, be very brief. What can be done in terms of trust? Well, there is no time at all, but still, I do not agree with Catherine in her saying that trust is there. Selectively, it can be said so, but in general, there is no trust between government and businesses. Why so? First, because there's no respect to businesses, and that line between shadow businesses, corrupt schemes, and the real factories and plants on which this country rests. Without economy, we are not going to have a country, protection, and unfortunately, many law enforcers in their bubble do not realize this. For all of them, we are all just corrupt schemers and criminals, earning some shadow dealings, wheeling and dealing. There are a number of law enforcement agencies that do not attend any forums like this. They just do their thing and make things painful for businesses. So we have to defend ourselves as a result of that. We have to be protective. That's not only because demographic challenges and Russian attacks, and not because of energy issues. These problems also stem from our own government, which is supposed to help us, like it did during the first month of the full-blown invasion. But we had this trust and mutual understanding. And unfortunately, for some reason, it has waned away, because our taxes are not important now, thanks to foreign aid. So now we are simply insignificant for statistics. On the example of my group of companies, Textile Contact, I can say that over the last 3 years, we have paid 1,700,000,000 hryvnias of taxes. That may not be too much, but we have 1,000 workers. So that amounts to 300,000 hryvnias for one worker per year. So we would like to be respected instead of having criminal cases. And this is true for many factories where you cooperate with the government in military orders, and now these same factories are experiencing tremendous pressure. I know that we have one criminal case registered, but I'm very calm about it. If someone comes to us and they block our activities and start attacking us, we are not going to engage in any discussion. We are even ready to give those law enforcers the keys to our factory. If you believe that you can organize operation better, do it, please. We have invested $14 million in the light industry, and this is very difficult. It takes time. We are relocating the business from Poland to Ukraine. We are using 65 trucks in order to transform that equipment. So it's very difficult in terms of logistics. We're producing fabric. We have 13 fabric making factories. So we're not businesses, we are makers, producers. And you have to discern between these two categories too. When I talked to one very renowned official in the government, I told them that we are doing everything. What else should we do? Why do we have this tremendous pressure? And he said to me, well, you have your own business, and they have their own business too. A different kind of business. You're preventing their business from being prosperous. They are interested in working with someone who is making tax avoidance a competitive advantage. So how do we compete with them? I agree with all the speakers on this panel in this respect, and let me add that we are ready to give you advice. If you reach out to us, we can give you a list of key issues where de-shadowing is taking place. So please take this list and do your work and stop preventing us from doing our own work. Let us sleep in peace without expecting a knock on the door telling us there is a search. So let us call it a day on this. I thank all the participants of the discussion, and out of respect to the audience, I would like to give us a chance to ask 3 questions. There is no such chance, so I thank you with this, and let us give a round of applause to the speaker.